Well, welcome for this last seminar before Christmas and before the start of the new year. Today we again stay within ÚFAL borders, so to say. I'm happy to welcome the speakers, Lucie and Martin, who will tell us something about the grant, if it is so, called EdUKate, which concerns the multilingual learning materials for Ukrainian children in Czech schools. So the floor is yours.
Thank you for the introduction. Good afternoon, everybody. Thank you for coming in such a very pre-Christmas time. Thank you for being here. And today, Martin and me, we will speak about an ongoing project of applied research funded by the Technological Agency of the Czech Republic, which is devoted to machine translation and to machine translation of a specific domain, the educational domain, and to the educational domain, and it will include also some other quite specific features of machine translation. This work is a joint work of the people who are included in the project. Apart from me and Martin, it's Mishonová, Vera Kloudová, who are in the audience, and then also our Ukrainian native speaker, Maria Anisimová and Jiří Balahar. So the outline, it's quite the usual. First, I will speak about some timeline of this project, about how it all started, how we ended up submitting a project proposal on this topic. Then I will give you some project basics. Further, I will speak about the data, about the specifics of the educational domain in machine translation. And then I will give floor to Martin, who will describe the method we use, who will speak about TAČR-Translator and its adaptation for the given task. Hopefully, we will have enough time for a live demo, which is a representation of our first results on this project. And then we will sum up and go home for Christmas. So the background of the project, the majority of you know how it all developed here at the Institute of Formal and Applied Linguistics. We know the infamous date of February 24th when Russia invaded Ukraine. It's already 2 years, 9 months, and 19 days today. Very shortly thereafter, practically in 2 weeks, 3 weeks, there was the first direct Czech Ukrainian translator published by the members of this institute as a part of this huge society-wide effort of solidarity to help all those refugees and people in need. I have to say, I didn't put it on the slides, that in the first phase, we had, the Czech Republic had approximately 500,000 of people who came from Ukraine to Czech Republic. So when we published the translator, it was first called the Linda Translator, later remained, according to the university, as TAČR-Translator. And since then, it has been steadily developed and enhanced, and is already also took part in various machine translation competitions. In May, we also launched an Android app, so you can use TAČR-Translator also with voice input and output on your phone. And there is still the original online address, translator.cuny.cz, where you can find the translation service online. During the first year, we were able to get many users of several kinds. apart from individuals, which were mainly Czechs who would try to translate some content to help the Ukrainian refugees, but also vice versa. It was organization, an NGO Pomáhej Ukrajině, and the police of the Czech Republic that was very specific times investigating of war crimes. At its very peak, we had almost 600,000 translation requests a week in the first year. 1 year later, September 2023, we had approximately, it was a little lower, logically, we had approximately 30,000 translation requests per day in one direction and 12,000 in the other direction. So during the first year, actually, something like 3 months after the start of the conflict, we were addressed by the Fraus publishers. I have a citation from the very first email communication by the head of the digital platforms in Fraus, who asked us for our translation services. You can read it yourselves. And we somehow started cooperating, but there were many subjects who addressed us at the time, and some cooperation developed, some not. It was very organic at that time. So half a year later, in November 2022, we actually agree, we and the ÚFAL team led by Martin and Fraus people agreed to submit a joint project proposal for applied research. In August 2023, the project was accepted. We were all quite glad. And in the same month, on August the 30th, we went to Pilsen to have a kickoff meeting at Fraus Publishers' offices there, when we met all the team which is involved on their side. So the project topic is promoting digital education of foreign language children through machine translation. And the ÚFAL page can be found under the address given there. The project spans across something more than 3 years, and we are now at the end of the first year, 15 months. And the main applicant, this is quite obvious, is the Institute of Formal and Applied Linguistics, Mathematical Faculty, and the co-applicant, or the so-called Aplikační garant, the company who uses our results, is the Fraus Publishing House. The project is led by myself, and we are very happy to have Lenka Fischerová as our administrator on our side, and by Adam Jelínek, who some of you had the opportunity to meet in person last week here in Prague, as we had a project coffee together, and he is the director of digital platform for the whole of the Fraus publishers. The goals of the project, the first goal is to develop a multilingual mutation of the interactive exercises within the learning portal Škola s nadhledem. Škola s nadhledem is a web portal run and owned by Fraus. It's the extension of all their textbooks and other interactive and digital stuff. In the first phase, we promised to translate into Ukrainian, but then we will add also other languages. The second goal of the project is to introduce other functionalities which are highly relevant for Fraus as a user, but also they can be used for any users, such as translating a formatted input that you put XML coded input, and the translation doesn't get confused by it and translates with the same translation quality. There are also other stuff. One of the subtasks is also translating text incorporated in images. So actually this talk is our project report after 15 months of the project. So I will introduce briefly Fraus, our partner. The Fraus Publishing House is the largest Czech textbook publisher. And I hope those of you who have kids or grandkids are quite familiar with this publishing house. Can you raise hands who think or know that your kids or any relatives are working with Fraus textbook at school? Yeah, Okay, and now from those of you, are you aware that at the bottom of every page of the maybe of the newer Fraus textbooks, there is a QR code or a 6-digit number and a website where you could find extension of the paper textbook? Did you know that? Okay, some of you did, so now you all know. And if you, like, there is also a list of different digital-based things that you can find in this hybrid system of education. Actually, today, the most textbook publishers really work in hybrid mode. This is very popular, very modern. You have these interactive whiteboards at schools, you have tablets and other digital devices. So it's very, and also since the COVID time, the distance and digital learning is, it also took strength. As you can see, some of the educational apps also include 3D models of whatever human body. So if you take this number or the QR code, it will lead you to the web homepage of Škola s nadhledem, the digital portal we will be translating or the exercises in it. And yeah, so I've already mentioned that this is directly linked to the textbooks and workbooks, and it had also instant results and evaluation of the students incorporated, so you can track the performance of the student as a teacher, etc., etc. And it's available on different types of devices. Once you enter the number or the QR code, you will get a screen. This is a screen of a random, or actually not random, exactly from this textbook, an exercise about culture in Europe. And now there is a multiple choice exercise, or this is its first screen. So this will be the content we will be translating, or we are already translating. The use cases. So who is this good for? The first use case are Ukrainian children that learn Czech in Czech schools. And second, as a secondary users, it's either at school their teachers, their Czech teachers, or at home their Ukrainian speaking parents. So that's the use case one. And then there's the use case two, which was not really intended, but by translating those exercises into Ukrainian, we actually also try to preserve the mother tongue of those kids who are staying here and maybe losing touch with their first language. These two use cases also apply for the other languages that will be involved later, English and German. Okay, so at the beginning of the project, we had to map the needs of the target group and to somehow orientate ourselves in the socio-economic or cultural situation of the group we are actually targeting. So first we analyze an external large report of the PAQ research and Sociologický ústav of the Czech Academy of Sciences. And we just took out some important or relevant information for us, which concerned children's education, their leisure activity, and mostly their knowledge of Czech. So this was done together with Český národní panel. There were volunteers who are getting paid for filling in different questionnaires. And it was more than 750 households of Ukrainians living in Czech, refugees living in Czech, who had children in this age. So these people, actually, it's a huge survey, and it was like a sixth wave of surveys of this type. So they gather a lot of data, which is usable for different purposes. So what was important for us was that in June 2023, just 74% of those households had access, limited or no access to a computer. 74% had limited or no access to a computer. And the knowledge of Czech, 62% of these Ukrainian kids spoke some Czech in everyday situations already in June 2023. 19% of them spoke it fluently, but only 68% of children did learn some Czech at school or in some courses, which means that approximately 1/3 of of the Ukrainian children weren't exposed to any Czech at all, maybe on the street, but not at home and not at school. Second, we carried out our own questionnaire survey. Actually, it was conducted by Fraus with our little help. And we were able to gather 72 respondents among teachers, different contact of ours or social media contacts. And these were teachers of the primary schools, 1st and 2nd grade. And they had at least one pupil speaking Ukrainian in each class. And it turned out that the other languages spoken in those classes are mostly Russian and Vietnamese, but then also Slovak, English, and then some others. And those 42 people were questioned. I just chose or picked some questions that were relevant for this survey, for this talk. And we asked about applying any support measures for children with different mother tongue, what happens in those classrooms. So at that time, that's December 2023, in 69% there was no teaching assistant in the classroom who would somehow help the teacher, help mitigate the language barrier which there was, obviously. But the situation with individual Czech lessons for foreigners was slightly better. Like this sample is much smaller than the first one, but already more than 80% of the children could learn some Czech. But a negative side is that almost like 71 of them could learn Czech only at the expense of some other school subjects. So where other kids had mathematics or whatever subjects, the Ukrainian kids went away to have their Czech lessons. So they missed their lessons, their courses. And then we asked about what we do, what the teacher can do if the children do not understand Czech. So they explained the topic with more Czech, which is somehow, okay, it may help, but it may not. They get an online translator to help them, or they use the help of some other pupil with the same language. And one more slide about the results of the survey. The biggest problems for the foreign children turned out to be the rules, mostly grammar rules of Czech language, mostly declination and vowel length, terms, professional terms from national sciences, and the speed of explanation by the teacher. The biggest problems of the teachers, on the other side, were that preparing individualized teaching for the foreign language speaking children is really time consuming, and the available materials, the textbooks, are not very helpful. So, and one small piece of information would be that teachers in principle like to use online exercises, that they use it a lot, and they use it with the whiteboards and interactive devices they already have in most of the schools. Tablets were very often mentioned as a device to help the Ukrainian kids. So we asked about the possibility to switch the online exercise to the pupil's native language, and 40% of the teachers said it would be a great help. 44% said that it would be helpful, at least in some cases. Okay, now I will briefly translate the nature of the data we are translating. It's very specific, both from the formal perspective and from the content perspective. So Fraus has at this moment approximately 8,000 exercises, interactive exercises on their web. The types of exercises, like the interactivity, lies in drag and drop exercises, yes, no, or multiple choice quizzes, fill in the gaps, pairs, crossword, mind maps, timelines, dictations, etc. So this is not fluent raw text. And when we were thinking about this and we were clicking through the exercises, we found out that it makes no sense to translate all of it. Like regarding the type of the exercise, crosswords, You can translate the legend, but you don't get the same crossword in a different language. Content-wise, grammar practice in different languages are maybe not that worth translating, or for first graders, exercises based on syllables or on individual letters. This is also not really useful. From the machine translation perspective, typically these texts are very short texts. Multi-sentence context is quite rare, so it's a challenge for translators. It's more like a vocabulary dictionary thing than real coherent texts. Lot of these terms which are there are subject specific and really professional. And exercises are obviously HTML formatted, and they contain very many strange stuff like images, other objects, audio, possibly or also video. So out of these 8,000 exercises, we took a set of 400 exercises that got manually translated, and they form a development set and test set. First into Ukrainian, but then for the next phase of the project, we already have their German translations, professional translations, and then we will have English. Martin will tell you more about the test set and development set. They already proved quite useful. So to give you an idea of text which we are dealing with. So how many of you know what is halki? Come on. Okay, it's not a basic Czech word. How many of you know what is žlabatky? Okay, yes, the school kids should know it. So maybe you can somehow deduce the meaning of by the sentence, by the context, but I will save you. This is halki, this is žlabatky. So obviously our translators, not only our, but actually all translators that I tried, somehow have difficulties with this kind of terminology. Here I put the reference translations of the Ukrainian, horichotvorky, these kinds of flies or insects. Yeah, I have to say at this place, I have to say a big thank you to our Ukrainian translators, the professionals, because they went through all the effort to translate all the biology, chemistry, and physics, or was it geography terms we had there. One side remark to this sentence. This is a typical sentence in Czech, which would confuse the translators with regard to word order. This is an object, verb, subject sentence, which is untypical. And even into English, which I can somehow evaluate, I can't evaluate Ukrainian that well. Most of the online translators just failed in the word order. The only system that was able to produce such a sentence with passive here was the ChatGPT 4.0 version and myself without any translator. Yeah, so this was the side remark. So this is, some of the sentences really look like that. Okay, now I will give the floor to Martin.
Thank you. Yes. So I will tell you more about the training, how it went, and I will start with the training data, as this is usually the most important part we are focused. So we had the kind of what we treat as a baseline is the TAČR's translator from the last year, and we already collected a lot of parallel Czech-Ukrainian text. So this was some 8 million sentences. Here I say lines because sometimes there could be rarely be more sentences on a single line, or even not a full sentence. But in this case, we try to segment it on sentences, which resulted in 82 million of words, both in Czech and Ukrainian. In addition to the parallel, or also I could say authentic parallel data, we collected monolingual Ukrainian texts and translated them back to Czech, which is a technique called back translation. And here we got even more. 55 million sentences and about 600 million words. And now we wanted to enrich this with something which will be specific for our domain of education. So if you have some hints what we should focus on, please contact us. But so far we were able to collect the subtitles from the Khan Academy. Our colleagues here at ÚFAL were collecting this for multiple languages. So we extracted just the Czech Ukrainian. So there were some 1,200 subtitle files, and we had an option to segment them on sentences, but in some preliminary experiment, this showed as not so helpful. So we used the chunk between the subtitles as there are on the screen, so using the timestamps for alignment. But as you can see here, these are thousands, while this was millions. So this is like less than 1 million words for the Khan Academy, and about 3.5 million words from books from the National Library, where we contacted them. Actually, it was extremely difficult to get, like bureaucratically, I would say, to get the books and license and so on. So we cannot redistribute them. And even the very first part was to, like, I just hope that there will be a query system where I could say, okay, I want all the books which were originally written in Ukrainian, or even better, I want all the books which you have both in Ukrainian and Czech, even if the original was in another language, usually English. But this was not so easy, and still perhaps is not. But in the end, we succeeded. So we have 76 books. 5 of them were originally written in Ukrainian, and actually we got the Czech translation from the National Library. 70 were in another language, German, English, and so on. So both the Czech and Ukrainian are translation. Sometimes we had to find the other translation elsewhere. Not all of this is from the National Library. And so these are some 200,000 sentences. And as for the monolingual data, we got, there is the Ukrainian publishing house Ranok, and they have like school books in PDF files. So we extracted it and back translated to Czech. So this is again about some 3 million words. Just like all of these sources have some issues. So the first issue is that all these additional sources are orders of magnitude smaller. And also, like in the Khan Academy, the subtitles are not always translations. So here, this is, sometimes it's completely different. Like the timing, the translator decided to translate, focus on different part. There could be some automatic filtering. Sometimes it's just that instead of, like here, the plus is translated this way, but sometimes even like the numerals are translated as numbers and so on, which is not really necessary. So there is some kind of noise. As for the National Library books, these are fiction, famous authors. So sometimes, you know, it's the literary, well, the translation is for like fiction, so it's not always sentence to sentence. And we also had issues with sometimes the segmentation to sentences is different in those languages, even we try to optimize it. Sometimes we had to scan some of the books and use OCR. So all of these issues are there. Okay. What about the method, how to do the machine translation? So the baseline Charles translator, it's a narrow machine translation transformer, and I had several talks about this in previous years, so I will not repeat it. Let's focus on how we did the domain adaptation to the educational domain. So what we tried first was to do so-called translationist tuning on a development set from this educational domain. What do I mean by translationist tuning? It's basically just early stopping on the method which is used to train the Charles translator, and that's the block-back translation. What does it mean, block-back translation? I cannot translate it in detail, but basically it means that we have some authentic data, the originally parallel, and synthetic, the original monolingual. And we train in blocks of like for several thousands of steps or hours of training. We do the authentic data, then we train on the synthetic data. So here is the blue score, but we could use any other automatic measure. And as you can see, it goes up and down. And if we do some further tricks, averaging and smoothing, we get even like better results than if we would train on any of those sources individually or in any mixture. So there is a synergy. But what is interesting for our purpose, we can use just a different development set. So I use the train checkpoints I already had. And just the only task is select which of the checkpoints stored at each hour is the optimal one for a given domain. And with this way of training, actually, there can be huge differences in the usability of the checkpoints. So I plotted here 3 different development sets. So originally we had just the Flores set, which is like multilingual test set by Facebook originally. Then in WMT test set, this is actually also our previous achievement. We are collecting, well, there are several domains, but some of those domains are from the logs of the TAČR translators, from the users who gave us, who agreed that we can use the data after anonymization. So these are real world data communication of the refugees with the Czech people. So this is quite indicative for our use, for the use case of TAČR-Translator. But here we are dealing with the online exercises. So this is yet different. So like originally, this is the blue score. So originally the quality is very low. Then we start training, it goes up. And here is the point where is the maximum on the educational domain. And you can notice that the same checkpoint would result in suboptimal blue score on the WMT. And I have confirmation also by the human evaluation. It wouldn't be exactly like this curve, but we see there are also huge differences in the human evaluation. And even here, like on the original Flores. And the other way around, if we choose what we did, like the best checkpoint on the Flores dev set or WMT, it wouldn't be optimal for this domain. So this is like the trick we did. And of course, what we did afterwards, we added the extra monolingual and parallel data. The extra monolingual data is the RANOC, which was added to the original baseline monolingual data. These 2 were added to the parallel data. Of course, I had to upsample them because they were several orders of magnitude lower. And here is the evaluation. So according to automatic metrics like character F or blue score, we can see let's say a minor improvement by the translationist tuning, but still it's significant. And actually no difference when adding the extra data, which we hoped will be domain specific, that there will be some special terminology. We then did the human evaluation where we asked 7 annotators to just score each translation of the 3 alternative translation anonymized with a score from 0 to 10. And here the difference there is in both, there is a significant improvement with the t-test, like this seems like significant, and also this other improvement. So actually the extra training data helps even there. Yes, we also, our colleague Maria did a qualitative evaluation of the error types in the original TAČR translator, and she found out that most critical are the lexical errors. There can be several reasons, and I will focus on this afterwards. Even other reasons, for example, if the whole text is written in all uppercase, this also results as all of these kinds of errors, but we have other ways how to deal with it. So sometimes the problem is that it completely changes the meaning. There were some morphological errors like wrong case, gender, sometimes inconsistent, formal and informal, tykání, vykání, caused because in this case we are using sentence level models which translate each sentence individually, which is motivated. Well, this was easiest for us, but we know that in most cases we don't have the multilingual, multi-sentence context anyway. And there are almost no syntactic errors. although we know about some phenomena where Ukrainian and Czech differ, so we were kind of looking forward to focus on it, but that's not the biggest issue now. And this is how the manual evaluation looks. So here is the source sentence, here just for reference, the human reference translation. And here there are the three anonymized systems. So actually this one is the TAČR-Translator, this one is the translationist tuning, this one is the plus adding the extra data. And the annotators had to just fill in the numbers from 0 to 10 here. So here, luckily, the last system is 1 point better. I don't really know why. They were also allowed to put here some comments. So this way we learned that a special property of this of this data is that some of the sentences are not actually true because, you know, they have to, maybe the exercise was find errors in or which claim is true, which is false. So this says that John Wycliffe was a Czech philosopher, but actually he was not Czech. So sometimes this maybe could cause issues with large language models, which are maybe more wise than the empty systems, which usually just try to translate it. So we could think that everything is great, that the scores of 7 points out of 10, this should be reasonable. So we tried it in practice. So this is the Little Red Riding Hood fairy tale. The children have to read it or they can listen to it, and then they should choose one of these 3 options. So this is like reading comprehension. So you know this fairy tale, I would guess that the most important 3 parts of the fairy tale are that the wolf wants to eat or devour the red hiding hood. He pretends or he dissimulates that he is very friendly, and she has some marble cake. Well, unfortunately, exactly those 3 most important words were translated very wrong. So this to dissimulate, zashumity, it doesn't exist in Ukrainian, such word. It was invented. This word is not the proper translation. I'm not sure, maybe it also doesn't exist. And the marble cake, Bábovka, here it says bajky, which is a fable, which is really wrong translation, although the word exists. So it's only 3 words wrong. Maria told us that most of the other words are almost correct. The whole reading comprehension, well, there are further sentences, further questions. So the whole exercise now it makes it useless. So we need to be careful. We are aware about this. There is another issue that the data is originally formatted as a JSON. The Fraus, we agreed on an exchange format with XML, but even then it's sometimes quite difficult to find out, for example, which elements in the HTML or XML needs to stay in which order so that the page renders correctly. So this is the real example of the source, and we are getting to the next topic, which is how to translate a formatted text so that we can translate not only HTML, XML, but actually any documents you would like to. So one approach would be, okay, we could train the empty systems on such formatted text, and maybe that will be the future with large language models. But this here, we wanted to make sure that if a valid input comes in, we produce a valid output. So we use basically a standard approach, extract the plain text from the markup, the standard translation, in our case with the TAČR-Translator of the plain text. Then, like if some HTML elements are outside the sentence, it's very easy to introduce back the sentences into the markup. But if you have some words in the sentence highlighted, you need to do word alignment. So you need to know which word corresponds to which in the translation. So we have a special API and web service. Our colleague trained an awesome aligner for several language pairs, including Czech and Ukrainian. And then via projecting the word alignment, we can insert the markup. There are difficult issues, like if a single word translated as two words, but they are far apart in the translation, do you want to create two HTML tags instead of one? But if the HTML tag had some ID, like here, maybe you don't want to reintroduce the same ID twice because that wouldn't be valid. So there is a lot of engineering going on, but we have also some special features for Fraus. So that's the special format, and they mark which elements cannot be reordered and which can. So basically, we will then split it into sentences, but sometimes just from the plain text, you know, if there is just a list of options, of phrases, we wouldn't from the plain text recognize that this is not one sentence. So there are fill in the blank tests or closed texts, like here. Our something was nicely decorated. And when translating this, you would like to know what's there. So actually, in this case, it was our flat was nicely decorated. And you need to know what is the gender of the flat in Czech, and in Czech is masculine. But in Ukrainian, it was most probably be translated as Naša kvartíra byla, so a feminine kvartíra. So for proper translating the sentence, you need to know what's in the blank. And there are usually several options, so you need to know which of the options is the correct one, because they follow this, that actually even in Czech, they have some clues in the gender here. So we plan to do a special handling of this, that we reinsert there the options and translate it within the whole sentence. Unfortunately, for example, in this case, this is not marked. They have a special type of exercises for filling the blanks, but here they didn't use that special type, so this particular sentence still wouldn't be translated correctly. And Michal Novak also, some of the translation of exercises are translated by professional translators, so we just are able to reintroduce the text into the markup, so that some of the exercises will be translated by humans. And if we have time for more biology, so you already know Halka and Žlabatky, but maybe you would want to learn more about some bugs. We programmers hate bugs, but maybe biologists love them. So what are the reasons for errors in translating these terms, like in chemistry or in this case in biology? So one reason is that the term was mistranslated in a given context, but maybe in some other context it would be translated correctly if we have at least some correct translation in the training data. So this is the example of to dissimulate. I hope our system will be able to translate at least in some cases correctly. I'm not sure why it was not translated correctly in the fairy tale. The other category, the second category, are words which are mistranslated perhaps in any context. So it's difficult to test, but we know, for example, that to schlamsnout this, we have no occurrences of this word in the training data, even of the lemma. So basically, it would be very difficult, well, maybe with pre-trained language model on monolingual data, but we even have the monolingual data there for the back translation, and it still doesn't help. And third interesting category are words where basically an exact translation into Ukrainian doesn't exist. So here is the example. There was a sentence, larvy se jmenují ponravy. The larvae are called grubs in English. It's the word ponrava. And a definition of it, it's a larva of a beetle from a special superfamily of beetles, but not from others. And actually, this is not really phylogenetically, like the biologists do not agree whether it's a good idea to have such a name for such a superfamily, because maybe they are not really related. Anyway, that's how it is. So you have kind of few options how to translate it in Ukraine. You can use a more general term, just the larva, but then this sentence like larva are called larva wouldn't really work. You can choose a more specific term. So actually one of these superfamily of beetles, it's a Maybach roast. I think this is the one. So you can say Lichinka Kruščák. And actually, our reference translation uses Nympha, the human translation, which is wrong translation. It's from different insects, so sometimes even the native speakers struggle to translate it correctly. Another example, like Sisu, so here perhaps there was no good translation into Ukrainian, so they used also a Latin name. I'm not sure about this case, but there are some cases where the Czech terminology, we have a very well done terminology for all the species, which makes the translation perhaps more difficult. If we use the Latin, we could just copy it, as we can see here. So that was all from myself.
Okay, the first version of automatic translations are online, but they are online on a secret demo portal, which you can access only if you don't know the URL. This screenshot is a visualization of a pilot of the demo portal. The pilot was conducted by Fraus, and some teachers just went through the translated exercises and gave us feedback. So this is just a random shot of the pieces of interviews that were recorded with the respondents. The respondents were 7 participants in an approximately 1 hour long interview, which was recorded and transcribed for the purposes of getting the most important feedback. The 8th person is still in progress, we will have the results after the new year. 3 of those people, of those respondents were native Ukrainians, but let's now have a look of who we need to pilot such a portal. We need people who are native Ukrainians. They live in Czech Republic and work in educational area. They are teachers or teachers in a broad sense. And they have to speak good Czech to be able to interact with the interviewers. So how many of people can actually pilot our portal? So some general notes, like maybe 70% of the feedback was to general stuff of the web portal, how it works. Only, I assume like 30% was some comments on the translation quality. So let's start first with the general notes. Everybody was really happy that this translator exists, but it's a bit late. It's already 2 years after the time when it was most needed, or maybe almost 3 years. But better late than never. We plan to also accommodate English translations, but people care less about English translations since there are huge amounts of English learning materials already. But there is a huge interest in Vietnamese. So we were asked if we can add Vietnamese among our languages, but that's maybe for another project. Then there was issues about the responsiveness. That means the compatibility of the interactive content with different type of devices or hardware. Some things work well with computers or tablets, but they don't work with cell phones or vice versa. So this was a kind of feedback that was outside our interest. There were further technical issues that are maybe, again, to be solved by the IT department at Fraus. For us, maybe it's important that the users don't want 2 languages side by side. They want to have displayed both languages, and in some the nature of some of the exercises just doesn't allow for that. And they prefer the toggle or just switching option. But what they do like, or they would wish to have, is a translation of a single word in the other language, like a tooltip. If you just point with the mouse and you'll get an instant translation, which is possible, but it would interfere on cell phones. It would interfere with other functions that are tooltips. So it's nice to have. We will think about it. Regarding the translation quality assessment. As we have seen, the same result, the most problematic are technical terms, but these are exactly those that need to be translated because the pupils, even us, we don't know them. So that's something we have to deal with. And the common language in the translator is already handled quite well. So now it's time for the demo. If we are able to move to the online exercises. No, the first one. This is a PDF. I don't know if it works. No. So give us a minute to try to find it out. Dushan, are we able to share that on the screen also?
Yeah, oh, I'll go share it online.
Okay. Jak to dostanu odsaď sem?
No, přepíšeš.
Přepíšu to, jo. Do toho dobrýho dokumentu tam, do toho disku a můžeš to kliknout. Sorry for this. Okay, so can you see it? Okay. So this introductory slide or page gets translated as well, but this will follow. It's different from the inside of the exercises. This is a scientific disciplines. It's a drag and drop or some drag and drop exercise. So I'm starting in Czech, and I have to put those disciplines in those 3 boxes according of the characteristics they agree with. So I'm in Czech, but here at the right upper corner, I can switch to Ukrainian, and I can start like this. Oh, maybe I forgot Ukrainian. I have to click back to Czech. Okay, historie, fyzika, geologie. Okay, I can somehow proceed in Czech or again in Ukrainian. Yeah, I don't want to finish. I just do it randomly. Well, I think I'm finished, so I'll submit my answers. I get a note that I have not finished, but I will move on anyway. And these are my results in Ukrainian. I want to see the correct answers. So here I see them. I want to see the correct answers in Czech. So here I see them too. And I could ask how the correct answers should be if I finish the whole exercise. So there it is. I can again switch to Czech or to Ukrainian. That's it. Do we want the other one? Well, what's the time? Sorry. Yeah, maybe can you answer this now or
Yes.
later?
I think I can answer this. So the reason is that we still use the baseline MT system as it was developed for the CHARS translator. And there we expected that it will be used also in the Android app with the voice input with ASR. And there everything is lowercase, even like the beginning of a sentence. So we boosted up the training data by adding example of input sentences which are all lowercase. And the task of the translation was also to decide whether it should be capitalized in the translation or not. So this is quite helpful in the ASR setting. Also, not only capitalization, but missing punctuation. So the system is robust that if you don't write any commas and dots in the input, it will still translate it correctly. But it's not so helpful here, where we would just want perhaps to preserve the capital. Well, not every time. Sometimes, you know, there can be some grammatical rules, words which are capitalized in Czech, like the names of the languages. I'm not sure what are the rules in Ukrainian, but we can see artifacts of this. So yes, we will have to retrain perhaps the system to make also the capitalization properly working.
Okay, I think we still have time for another quick exercise. This one is fill in the blanks. It's Christopher Columbus. So it looks differently. So there is a text and you see the blanks that you have to fill in. And there is some content there. Let's switch to Czech again. We can read it. And let me, okay, what is this? Okay, that was a mistake, sorry. How do I go back? Refresh. Here?
Yes, or here.
Okay. Yeah, wrong button. Okay, so let's say here, like this. Here, he wanted to go to India. Now you can see a declination error in here. That's because America is the correct solution and it was inserted to the sentence so that it could be translated in the correct case. India is not the correct answer, right? So it's the other way around.
Yes, well, we currently don't insert any of the options into the original text, but we plan to insert both the correct and incorrect options. Just that then we will have the rest of the sentence translated several times. And it could happen that based on the blank or on the substitution, even the rest of the sentence will differ. And we will have to choose which will be the translations which you will see. So that will be the one with the correct option. But the basic idea is when translating the missing words, we need to translate them in context. We still don't do it, but we plan to do it. So here we can see an example where an error was introduced in the case because India, both in these cases are the same as in the nominative, but that's not the case in Ukrainian.
Okay, so now all answers correct. And yeah, so that was another type of the exercise. Can we switch back to the presentation? Yeah, okay. So we are practically at the end. Doesn't move. Okay, yeah. So we are about to publish some of the first data, some of the first exercises, and that's the very current burning task. And what's coming next in the rest of the project is to create translations to English and German, And so we ask you all if you have or if you know about any German, Czech parallel data from the education domain, even German monolingual data from the education domain. It would all help us enormously. We will work also on the translation of text in images and translations of other types of formatted inputs. And we will also try to experiment with the newest methods for our translation needs. Here is a summary. In the EdUKate project so far, we have enhanced the Charles translator to translate interactive educational content from Czech to Ukrainian. And as a next step, we will translate from Czech to English and German. And after the first 15 months of the project, the first set of exercises translated into Ukrainian will be launched on the live web portal Škola s nadhledem. That's all from us too, and thank you for your attention.
Well, thank you very much for the interesting talk. I think we have learned about many details which just one couldn't imagine at the first sight. So I think it was kind of instructive. So first, let us start discussion. Who wants to know more? Indra. Yeah.
Thanks for a nice and clear talk. I got my attention was really caught by the example with the little Red Riding Hood and the 3 words which are needed to answer the questions, and these 3 words being mistranslated. So, so the question is, have you considered this as the inspiration for a new empty evaluation method? It is actually something that we really should try to do, translate the important bits correctly. So the question is then how to find the the important bits.
Thank you. So I was perhaps a bit exaggerating. There are also some other important words which were translated correctly. And basically, I think you wouldn't just finding important words in a text, like it depends on the questions, which are the important words. So without the questions, I don't think it makes sense to have any such evaluation. Also, what I would be afraid, you would need to spend a lot of time, like extrinsic evaluation, which is kind of what we did with the when speaking with the in the pilot study, speaking with the people, they told us, okay, this renders the whole exercise useless. But for like doing a quantitative evaluation of this time, we would get too little data, I'm afraid, for a lot of time or effort or money. So, and I think you could come up with questions where any of the words will be the important one. So in the end, trying to improve the overall quality of all words is, so far I don't see any like cases where you would need to choose one or another.
You don't have the mic.
It's interesting to see the correlation. I know that this is just a singular example, but that the question ask for something which is difficult, and it's difficult, of course, because of like lexical choices, and this is exactly difficult for the empty system trained on limited data. So I think it can be some general trend, right, that you ask on about the difficult things. Yeah, but.
Yes, it is definitely the case with the domain-specific terminology. Yes. So, other questions?
Yeah, that's something that I know that you are considering, or like, and that's the importance of the images or layout of the page for the translation? Because I don't think there are many examples. You just said that that's the plan to go there next, but why is that important? What are the cases where the layout and the images were already important?
Maybe this is a
I
question
can
for Michel. Okay.
answer that. So there are several exercises where you have probably is the way how it's designed on the web page. So it's actually it's a text, but it's it's a JPEG or PNG, and this text. So for instance, there is I think some advertisement or something, and you need to know the advertisement details to answer the questions you're being asked. And if this is not if the advertisements is actually the JPEG, so if you do not translate the content of this image, you are not able to translate it. Sorry, to answer it. Yeah, so that's maybe the easier way to do it would be just to represent the yeah, like this is how we want to do it, but it would be easier maybe to represent these exercises with something that is not image, which is easier to like manipulate. But this is the data we have, so we have to deal with that. So. Mm-hmm.
Another.
No, it's just a side question. As for the final result or application, are the students expected, or does the publishing house expect that there will be two versions? I mean, one which will be on the as online system and the other printed, or do they just assume there will be only an online version?
The project goal as it is right now only works with the electronic part. But with the systems we develop now, we are perfectly able to translate material that could be printed out, and we can take part in creating hard copy textbooks as well, if you want to.
So for printed materials, perhaps the users would expect that a human professional translator would at least check the correctness. So that's what could be done. And still, it can make the translation much easier when using a pre-translation of higher quality. Also, among the demands of Fraus, or perhaps also other people, was to be able to translate PDF files. So it's well known that it's somehow problematic because to extract the plain text from PDF is not so straightforward. You may not know where one column ends and where is the follow-up text and so on. But we are working on this. It's planned for future that we will be able to translate also PDF files, but perhaps still in this case, to help the users that the users will translate the PDF files themselves. And I forgot to mention, there is already like 2 use cases even in the online interface. Fraus already had an option to switch to another language. So we both have like, okay, so it's implemented, great. But then we find out that it's actually for so that the students practice another language like Spanish, so that the teacher wants to know whether the students did the whole exercise in Spanish. So there was a feature which we thought it's a bug, that when you switch the language to Czech, you resetted the exercise, so you get 0 points. You had to do it the whole exercise in that foreign language, because that's another feature. The teachers can see the scores of their students if they have the paid version. So this, in the end, we realized, okay, this is a nice feature, but here we wanted like immediate switch, not going back to the first page, like each exercise has several pages. So, and only during the implementation, we realized that we have different expectations from the language translation feature, that these are actually 2 different features. Other questions, comments?
Thank you. So, once again, many thanks for your interesting talk. I think it was the right topic to have before Christmas because we were kind of faced with some normal issues and questions and problems, kind of family issues. So thanks again, and thank you for coming. Thanks to those who are connected online. And I may only wish you all a nice Christmas, a quiet time during Christmas, and all the best for the coming year. And we are looking forward to see you at our seminars also from January on. So thank you again, and have a nice time.
Okay.